Hello, everyone. My name is DeVos. I'm a principal engineer with the AWS Data Protection team. I'm one of the original architects of AWS Backup, and I've spent the past 30 plus years architecting and building backup and recovery solutions. I'm here today to discuss AWS Backup's design principles and architecture. Before we get into the architecture slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about our design principles. AWS Backup is primarily a security solution. It enables customers to prepare for and recover from malicious or accidental data mutations. Our design decisions are guided by scale and security. At the scale of the cloud, where a given customer account can have tens of thousands of resources across 20 different resource types, and where organization can have thousands of accounts, functional consistency and simplicity are critical for ensuring our customers' primary resources are protected and that access to the resulting backups is properly managed. Our design allows organizations to centrally report on, configure, and monitor the creation and retention of backups. Backup administrators create backup policies that define how different classifications of data should be protected. This includes the backup frequency, the retention, and the storage targets. Backup operators control what resources to associate with these policies. Although this can be done by resource name, at scale, customers use AWS resource tags to specify what policies should be protecting their resources. When resource assignment is done via tags, application owners can associate their resources with a policy simply by setting the relevant tags. Our design allows backup administrators to focus on how to protect the various data types, like financial, payment, employee data, without having to understand.
So is AWS Backup different than EBS snapshots, or is it using the same facilities to do these things, or?
As we talked about a few minutes ago, AWS Backup is backing up quite a few different resource types, not just EBS and EC2. It's backing up 18 different resources, and it's doing it consistently, allowing a backup administrator to back up based off of data type. Go ahead.
When you say consistency, are you talking crash consistent or application consistent or what?
I apologize. I can understand the confusion. No, using the same methods, using the same policies. The idea of how we built this is that the backup administrator and backup operator, they're central IT folks. They don't understand the applications that underlie the resources or in the account. And they don't really understand how the various resource types work. They need to be able to have a consistent way of managing data protection across all the resource types, because at scale, no one's going to be able to do that. So what we've built is a solution that allows the backup administrators to focus on, how to back up different data types. Financial data, maybe I need to keep for 7 years. PII data, obviously, I only want to keep for around 30 days. They don't have to understand exactly how the applications are built or the unique properties of these resources. AWS Backup incorporates a zero trust principle into our security model. And this model allows backup operators to back up sensitive resources in an organization without having access to not having access to the actual data they are managing. Likewise, neither backup administrators nor operators can overwrite the resources when restoring, nor can they access the data they restore. What we created is a system that has a separation of control where the resource owners have full control of the resources that make up their application. They can create snapshots and do whatever they want for cloning or whatever purpose, but they have no access to the backups that are created and managed by AWS Backup. Whereby the backup administrator, they're able to create and manage the retention of backups, but they do not have access to the primary resources. That makes it a separation of control, so no one person can destroy both the primary resources and their copies.
Maybe that's something that you've covered as well a bit before, but so you're talking about the kind of segregation of duties in terms of what the backup admin can do. They can manage the policies, they cannot look into the data. I was thinking in terms of the, let's say, immutability of the backups. I heard before someone say that we're going to cover that later on. I was thinking, yes. First of all, do you have those features? And do you have also some kind of multi-admin kind of verification? You know, if you have policies like retention periods and you have a kind of a retention period during which you cannot delete the snapshots or whatever, do you have a way to, first of all, prevent tampering? And secondly, if you can enforce that some kind of increased verification for any change to the backup policies?
Excellent. Yes. All of the questions you answered, the answer is yes. And first of all, I do want to clarify that all backups, whether they be snapshots of RDS through the RDS console or EBS through the EBS console, they're immutable in the terms of you can't change the underlying content. It is outside of the control of the customer. That said, they can be deleted with a delete snapshot call. And so when you have heard us talk about the mutability of a backup, what we're really talking about is changing its longevity. How long will it live? And that is what our vault lock feature provides. And our backup targets we name vaults. And a backup can be sent to one or more backup vaults. And with each target, you can specify a retention. And so a customer can set up a retention of, say, 1 week, and that's going to be put to a locked vault. And they may put other backups into another vault, which is just a regular old vault, and they may do that on every 3 days and retain that for a year. That is all all in the customer's control, but the vault itself is configured to, when it's locked, there's two ways. And we're going to get into this in a little bit. There's compliance and governance lock. And in the compliance lock, there's nothing you can do, no matter how privileged, no matter who you call, you cannot have those backups deleted. So with regards to monitoring the plans and such, I will cover that later. Yes, we do have controls that allow you to do that to ensure that your plans are consistent with your compliance requirements.
So is backup vaults, do they have a durability specification like S3 and EBS kinds of things? I mean, are they replicated across zones? Are they replicated across regions? Are they replicated at all? Or is that something that customers would specify?
I'm going to talk to this in a little bit, but yes, all of the data that is stored is backed up with 11 nines of durability. It is spread across multiple AZs. It is just as durable as your data in S3. So with regards to the architecture, so conceptually, we've divided our service up into 3 components. We've got a control plane, a client plane, and a data plane. And our control plane responds to customer requests and managing the policies, vault, schedule, jobs, and configuring our compliance reporting. The control plane is totally agnostic to the different resource types. There's no conditional code that, hey, if it's an RDS, do this. If it's EBS, do that. That allows our development team to build general functionality quickly. Now we have a client plane that exposes an abstract interface, obviously, to the control plane. And it is responsible for all the resource-specific logic. And for each resource that we protect, we have a separate plug-in module that basically consolidates all that special purpose code, making it easier for us to add support for new resources. Now, AWS Backup also provides a data plane for some of our services. And our data plane, like I mentioned before, provides a secure, durable, and performant storage system. And we built something that is optimized for the backup and recovery use case. It makes it simpler for our clients to create incremental backups. It provides the metering and validation and garbage collection. So these integrating partners don't have to worry about that. Now, one thing that we've talked about with regards to EBS and RDS, there are some services that we orchestrate the backup creation, and there's some services where we actually pull the data out of the resource and store it in our data plane. AWS Backup backs up in a manner that is optimized for recovery. So where possible, where AWS services support native backup, like EBS, as opposed to building a separate system to pull the data out of the snapshot or using EBS Direct to pull the data out of it, we orchestrate the creation of the snapshot and we manage the life cycle of the snapshots that we create. We do this for a number of our services like RDS and FSX and Redshift and such. The idea there is, as was mentioned previously, getting access to your data is very quick when you do a restore when you use EBS or one of the services that are built on EBS, like RDS. For services that do not support existing native backup service, AWS has built clients that pull the data out of the service and store that data into our data plane. Some examples of that are S3, EFS, and TimeStream. We've also done this for DynamoDB. Now, these two different ways of integrating the primary services, integrating for backup with these primary services, it does create some minor functional differences. For example, backups of RDS resources, they can't be copied across account and region boundaries at the same time, whereas backups of EBS and S3 can. And another example is how the backups are encrypted. When you create a backup, the original backup that you create, for an orchestrated backup, it's encrypted with the key that's associated with the primary resource. For backups where we're actually pulling the data, we are encrypting the data with the key associated with the backup vault. Every vault is given a backup key, a KMS key. The idea is that the backup and the primary store should not share a dependency. And if they share a dependency, there's a single point of failure where if that key gets destroyed, you can destroy both the primary and the secondary. But when backups are copied, irrespective of whether we've orchestrated it or we've pulled the data, the target of the copy is encrypted with the key of the target vault. So regardless of how the backups are created, AWS Backup maintains the control of the longevity of those backups. You can go to the EBS console, the RDS console, you can try and delete these things, or the API, of course, and those requests will fail and inform you that they're being managed by AWS Backup. That allows, once again, the backup administrator to control the longevity of those backups. Now, moving on to compliance and the vault. When we talk about our vaults, specifically where we're storing our data, a vault is a logical store. It It is an abstract concept that we put on top of the backups that we create. It provides a encryption key that we use to encrypt the data that goes in that vault. It provides an SMS notification to let you know when anything happens to the backups that we've created. And it has an access policy, allowing the backup administrator to grant access to, say, application owners to self-service or restore. The backups that we take of the EBS and RDS, those snapshots, they appear in both the EBS console as regular snapshots and in AWS Backup's backup vault. So when we create a backup from a plan, it inherits a life cycle from the plan. And after it's created, the life cycle is a property of the recovery point. So a malicious actor can delete a recovery point or update the life cycle of a recovery point. When we talk about our lock technology with regards to how we are implementing our locking on a vault, if a recovery point, if a backup is in a vault and it is a locked vault, if an API request comes in to change the longevity, change the retention, or to delete it, it will just get failed at the front door, irrespective of what access the person has, whether they're the root or not. We will block the delete. The lock configuration can be deleted in governance mode. So if you configure this in governance mode, you're able to remove the lock if you want to. And customers can create at the organization level a policy that says, hey, nobody in any of my accounts in my entire organization can delete a lock policy. And so the control of the governance can be basically delegated to the root of the organization account. In compliant mode, there's nothing you can do to delete the backup or delete the lock. Even if you're the root of the organization, the request will fail. We also support legal hold, and legal hold, it extends the longevity of a backup. So in the case of, well, you have some sort of legal case or a reason to hold a backup temporarily, you can place an event, a legal hold request record, and that record will be associated with backups, either by tag or by primary resource and date range. And while a recovery point is covered by one or more legal hold requests, even if it life cycles out, we will not delete it. If the customer tries to delete it, even if it's in a regular vault, we will still block it. Once the legal hold is removed, the life cycle takes control again, and the backup will be deleted if it is already moved to, it's already lived its natural life. Are there any questions with regards to immutability, legal hold, retention?
Yeah, are you compliant with any specific regulatory regimes in regards to legal hold or compliance?
Yes, absolutely. With regards to our locking solution, Cohasset has assessed us. We are compliant to FINRA standards. Don't know the number off the top of my head. My apologies.
17A4C?
Standard, yes. And that requires not just locking, but legal hold. And with both of those solutions, we are compliant. And that, of course, is only in compliance mode.
Now, how do you deal with legal hold issues in Europe with GDPR and right to forget? How do you manage that process?
So that is a problem for the customer, to be honest.
It is.
Good answer.
He's not wrong.
You know,
The tool is there. I mean, you can use it if you need it, but it's not something that will be imposed to the backup plans. It's something that you can activate if you have a legal procedure where you have to do it for a temporary. It's designed to be a temporary hold for the data, right? So for specific situation.
And it wasn't meant to be a trick question. I was actually asking.
Yeah, no,
You had some magic
it's fair.
bolt to it. That's
It's fair. It's fair.
so
Yeah, and there are data
Also-
regulations that are different across different geographies. So to add to Steve's point, sorry, just Nancy here. There are different ways that our service team also works with customers, depending on what geographies they're in, depending on what regulations they're subject to. We can also configure custom policies, and that's why the policy-driven nature of what Steve is explaining is so critical to how the service functions.
And what I wanted to clarify is that it is the responsibility of the customer to wisely partition their data based off of type. They don't necessarily want to mix their PAI data with their financial records. The reason being they might want to put a hold on their financial records, or they want to retain their financial records for a longer period of time than they are willing or able to keep PII data. In Europe with GDPR, you have like 30 days, 90 days to delete and forget about the person. If your backups are only retained for 30 days, you can comply. But that only works if you have segregated your data across the primary resources. People have asked for, hey, can I just remove this data out of my backup? And that
pretty hard.
would potentially solve the GDPR problem, but it opens a huge vulnerability to someone corrupting and ruining your backups. As I stated, AWS Backup is a security product. Those backups are immutable. We will not change them. You cannot redact them. You can't remove the data out of them.
Hey, Steve, this legal hold versus non-legal hold or backup vault lock seems to have an implication that the resources on the legal hold are also locked, not just the backup vault data. Is that right? Am I reading that properly?
That is a way to look at it. Yes. The lock is, and that's why they're tied to the same compliance regimen. But the legal hold is used to extend the natural life of a backup for a period of time that
I understand.
very-
I understand the implications to backup vault, but I'm trying to understand how it applies to what looks like it applies to the resources themselves, not just the
Yeah.
backup vault data.
legal hold is agnostic to the vault. It is tied to the resources that you have protected or the recovery points that you think are important. You can either do it by specific recovery points, or you can do it by primary resource and date range. That allows you to, once again, you're putting it on temporary hold. Those things will not be deleted if you go directly to those recovery points, try and change their life cycle or delete them. Those API requests will fail. But as if you go and you delete the hold, then you can go ahead and delete the backups. So it certainly isn't like a lock, because there's a very easy way to get rid of it. Just simply remove the hold. Okay. So AWS Backup also has Backup Audit Manager. And Backup Audit Manager allows you to create reports that reflect your compliance to the organization's requirements. On a daily basis, AWS Backup Audit Manager, it evaluates the configuration of your policies and your vaults, thereby verifying the algorithms that the customer has configured. Additionally, it evaluates the result of these algorithms by ensuring you have the expected backups. Backup Audit Manager uses AWS config rules, and those rules are available to customers to use on their own through AWS config, which allows them to extend them and create their own evaluations as well. We are continually adding new evaluation rules to Backup Audit Manager to help customers resolve configuration issues quickly and ensure they have the backups they expect, especially as we add support for new features. Those different evaluation rules are added. There's a conversation, I'm going to bounce back to consistency, whether there's application consistency or crash consistency or no consistency. We talked about the backup administrator wanting to be ignorant of the different specifics of the resources they protect. That said, application owners care quite a bit about how the consistency of their backups. Each resource type offers a different level of consistency, and we make a best effort to document that in our documentation to make it very clear to resource owners what to expect. With regards to EBS, our backups are crash consistent or application consistent. We do have an option, and we have very few options in our backup policy definitions. We do have one to enable VSS on Windows servers. And so for Windows servers, if that option is enabled, we will use VSS to create an instance snapshot. We do not have the writer metadata associated with it, but we have created an application consistent image of the system. For services like RDS, they are absolutely application consistent. We are adding support for backing up resources directly in the future, and those, I mean, through the engine itself, and those, of course, would be application consistent backups because they're backups of the application. Things like DynamoDB and Aurora, of course, those are all application consistent. When it comes to compute instances, that's where there's a little bit of difficulty. When you talk about S3, S3 is it is consistent to within 15 minutes of your last backup, or sorry, from now. So anytime before now, I'm sorry, if I go back in time 15 minutes, I can restore to any second that you want, and it is consistent to that second.
Obviously, you guys don't cover the use case of a customer who wants to protect their AWS production data on targets outside of AWS, correct?
Actually, we do have support for backing up VMware instances, regardless of where they live.
No. I'm not. I mean to a target outside, not a source outside.
Vault someplace else.
Yes.
Yes. Our targets are all in AWS. They're all conceptually in a vault. They can be placed in any account in any region. You can copy your backups across them, but no. We are not sending backups back on premise. Or
I would expect nothing different.
What about for Outposts or something like that? Could you have a backup vault resident on an Outpost instance on-prem someplace?
That sounds like a lovely idea, and I'm sure you're not the first person to think of it. And I look forward to iterating on AWS Backup as things move forward. We are 5 years old, and we are actually 4.5 years old, and we are adding features very quickly, adding support for new resource types very quickly, and we expect to evolve to meet the use cases that our customers are asking for.